Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener. And thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's February 1st. Today we celebrate a Harlem poet who loved children and flowers. And we'll also learn about a newspaper man who wrote a fantastic essay about a harbinger of spring, the skunk cabbage. We'll hear some thoughts on how to start a garden, and we grow that garden library today with an extraordinary book that takes us on a tour of brilliantly curated plant life. And then we'll wrap things up with a little obscure verse about the language of trees. But before we get to all of that, I just wanted to take a second to welcome you to the month of February and all that this means, because what it means is that we have cracked the 50s. We are now just 47 days away from the first day of spring. And this is about the time of year when I start to get very excited about the garden and the amount of light that we're gaining each and every day. I know my houseplants are noticing the difference, and my little seedlings, my microgreens, and my herbs that are on my windowsill. They're all benefiting from those extra minutes of daylight. And I also wanted to share with you a bit of my conversation that I had recently with listener Mary Beth Hughes. We were talking about my houseplant setup back home in my garden library. And I have this area where I put all my houseplants together. They're on different sized crates so that they're elevated. They're kind of staggered. And the little ones can reach the window that way by being on the crates. In any case, what I have done is I kind of tucked away a little Alexa speaker that we weren't using, and I put it back in that area, and then I just have it play rainforest sounds or sounds of nature, and I just keep it set on a very low volume. But it's a wonderful way to kind of set the tone for that spot in my garden library. I've always loved the sound of running water, and I have fountains all over in my garden. But in the house, I wasn't too excited about having running water, especially with Sunny, our dog, because in no time he'd have that water completely licked up and I wouldn't be able to keep it refilled. Now, outside, I have all of the fountains attached to our sprinkler system, so they're totally maintenance free. But in the house, they run dry very quickly. And so I can fake the sound of a fountain through this little Alexa speaker. And I have to say, I am so tickled with that. And so when we came up to the cabin here, I brought one of those with me, and now I'm doing the same thing here. And I just love that. So if that's an idea that kind of captures your interest, or maybe something you want to consider, if you've had these smart speakers and you're not using them, or you're just not sure what to do with them, it's a great little way to start to incorporate a smart speaker into your home houseplant area, your home conservatory, wherever that is. And also, don't forget that if you have a smart speaker, a Google or an Alexa or some other type of device, you can always ask it to play the show. You can say, play the latest episode of the Daily Gardener podcast, or whatever podcast you're listening to, and she will. It's just that easy. That's all you have to do. And then if you want to go on to the next episode, you can just say next episode, and so on. And so that's a really great way to listen to podcasts while you're in the house. The other two things I just want to bring to your attention really quickly is that if you get a chance to head on over to the website, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. It's .org. And once you're there, you'll see a little sign up for the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. And that is a little kind of garden letter from me to you, and it will get you through the weekend with some extra botanical history and literature, in addition to some other things that I think you'll enjoy. So if you get a chance to head on over that way, you can go ahead and sign up for that. And then finally, if you have a second and can head on over to Podchaser, I would love it if you could give a review of the show over on Podchaser. I have a goal of getting 50 reviews for the show this year. And I would so appreciate your help with that. All right, here's today's curated news. Today's news was from the Chicago Tribune. It was written by Beth Botts, and the title is fantastic. It says, "Removing Deadwood makes for happier, healthier shrubs and trees." Now, what Beth points out here is totally spot on. She mentioned two things in particular I wanted to draw your attention to, and then you can go ahead and read the rest of this post for yourself. But in this article, Beth mentions that the first step in pruning a shrub or a tree is very easy, and it's just to remove the branches that are dead. And I know that sounds obvious, especially if you've been gardening for a long time, but you'd be surprised how many people are completely at a loss when it comes to pruning. And so that's exactly what I do with my student gardeners. I have them stand back and we look at the shrub or the tree, and we just kind of play a game of where's Waldo? Where are the dead branches? And that's how we start. It's such a great way to teach kids to prune with that simple first step. So teaching people to look at trees and shrubs and begin to see where that deadwood is, that's very important. And then the other thing that Beth mentions, that's a fantastic point, that many people are not aware of, is that if you remove those dead branches, that dead wood, you are opening up the interior of the shrub or the tree. And that's going to allow for more airflow, more light, and all of that reduces the chance for disease. So that's very, very good as well. I always think of this when we're pruning shrubs in the spring, because that's my first chance to teach my student gardeners about pruning. And most people have no idea how important it is to open up the interior of these trees and shrubs. The last little tip that I would include that's not in Beth's piece, but I think it really doesn't have anything to do with deadwood. I suppose that's why it's not in here, but it has to do with helping people understand the timing of pruning. And especially for your flowering trees and shrubs, if you can just remember the saying, prune time follows bloom time, you're going to be so far ahead, and you'll never have to worry that you're cutting off the blooms, that you're going to miss some spectacular flower show because you're pruning. So just wait until your shrub or tree blooms and then go in and do your pruning, especially in this case when we're talking about spring flowering shrubs and trees. Think about your lilacs, your forsythia, your magnolia, and so on. So there you go. Now, if you would like to check out Beth's fantastic post for yourself, it's called "Removing Deadwood Makes for Happier, Healthier Shrubs and Trees." All you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show. It's called the Daily Gardener Community. And once you're there, search for the word Deadwood, and Beth's post will pop right up. So you never have to take notes or search for links, because it's all right there for you. It's right there in the Daily Gardener Community. And before I continue, I want to make sure that I welcome our new members to the Daily Gardener Community. We have Adrian Williams, Teresa Glover, Julie Curtis, Mary Sandra Vilcom, Ruth Bergstrom, Georgianne Sebastian, Jamie Solomon, Connie Cottingham, Eileen Brooks, Darlene Patterson, and Melissa Brinyark. Welcome, you guys. And if you're listening and you'd like to join the group, it's so easy. All you need to do is the next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist Langston Hughes, who was born on this day, February 1st in 1902. Langston was one of the leading voices of the 1920s. He was part of the Harlem Renaissance cultural movement, and for the last 20 years of his life, Langston lived on the top floor of a brownstone on 127th Street. And when Langston lived in Harlem, everyone knew which house was his because it was the one covered in Boston ivy. Langston loved the look of the ivy, and it was planted at his request. Langston was just 5 feet 4 inches tall, and he reportedly saw the world through the wonder-filled eyes of a child. Langston's outlook no doubt helped him relate to kids, and he loved being around children. Now, one of the most charming details that I learned about Langston was that there was a little garden that he kept near the front steps of his home. Langston called the garden Our Block's Children's Garden, and with the neighborhood kids there to help, he filled it with nasturtiums, asters, and marigolds. And all the neighbor kids were in charge of the watering and weeding, a man after my own heart. And if you search for Langston's garden online, you'll find an adorable photo of Langston from 1955. Just Google Langston garden, and this picture will for sure pop up. And what you will see in this picture is that he is surrounded by kids. One of them is holding a watering can, and then others are kneeling, and they're behind a white picket fence. And on the picket fence is a round sign, and it says, Our Block's Children's Garden, along with the names of 26 children. And I know that because I counted them all. I was so curious just how many kids were part of Langston's garden. Almost 30 children in that Harlem neighborhood, which is fantastic. Now, as for his writing, Langston always said that Harlem was his muse. Langston's poem, Poet to a Bigot, is still timely, and the last line will find purchase with gardeners. And I was very excited to share it with you today. It goes like this. I have done so little for you, and you have done so little for me, that we have good reason never to agree. I, however, have such meager power, clutching at a moment, while you control an hour. But your hour is a stone. My moment is a flower. And it was on this day, February 1st, in 1916, that the American newspaper editor, essayist, short story writer, and poet Ben-Hur Lampman moved to Portland and began working for the Oregonian. And on March 2nd of 1942, Ben wrote an article defending the harbinger of spring, the skunkweed, or the eastern skunk cabbage, Symplocarpus foedatus. In this magnificent piece, Ben compares the yellow bloom of the skunk cabbage to a candle. Here's what he wrote. What a flower the skunk cabbage is, to be sure, when it lifts to burn coolly in the swampy wayside. There are few wayfarers who do not exclaim to see it. There seems to be something votive about it, as perhaps there is. The reason one is sure that people care about it is simply because they must. There is no other choice, for the elder law is that people must always care about beauty. A skunk cabbage is a kind of calla lily, and though its odor is faintly mephitic, you don't have to sniff it. Now, it may be supposed that the farmer who tends the cattle thinks he has little use for a skunk cabbage if he meditates in the least on its utility. But if ever the year should come when the golden, cool candles were not kindled, the farmer would be the first to remark this and worry about it. For a farmer can't plow, and a farmer can't plant until the skunk cabbage is up everywhere. In Unearthed Words, today's words are by Cheryl Mercer, the American gardener and author of the book A Starter Garden, from her section called How to Start a Garden. As with most occupations, there are different ways to approach the garden. The absolutely right way to start a garden, for instance, is to bulldoze your whole yard. Then, according to a friend of mine, a brilliant, if obsessive gardener, spend some time in it, naked, in the middle of the night, wandering around, looking for microclimates, those slightly warmer or slightly cooler pockets of air that hover over even a tiny tract of land. After that, you start measuring and marking with stakes and string the beds and borders and enrich the soil with different things depending on what you're going to plant where, after installing a complicated and expensive underground sprinkling system. Meanwhile, months ago, you made careful lists of new and replacement plants you needed and ordered them all from the catalogs early enough to make sure you got what you wanted. You've also been germinating and grafting plants for weeks in your greenhouse or electrically heated cold frames so that everything will be ready at the right moment, gauging by the last frost date, plus a few extra days to be on the safe side, to plant outside in an orderly blooming sequence. You are armed and ready for spring. Now, perhaps a less desirable, but still reasonably effective way to start a garden is to notice one day that the weather is sunny and fine, and to think that it might be fun to plant a few things and see what happens. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Botanicum by Kathy Willis. This book came out in 2017, and the subtitle is Welcome to the Museum. Designed to teach students, this oversized coffee table book offers the chance to walk through a curated guide to plant life, and the entire experience is stunning. Katie Scott of Animalium fame provides the extraordinary artwork, which you can see even on the cover of this book, which is why it has a standing spot on the coffee table in my botanical library. I love this book, and any kid that comes to visit my house ends up looking through this book, and they love it as well. The author, Kathy Willis, is the Director of Science at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew, England. And so Kathy really has the perfect background to create a book like Botanicum, which shares a worldwide collection on diverse plant life, from perennials to exotics. And in addition to the artwork, Botanicum reviews botanical scientific knowledge, including cross-sections of how plants work. As a virtual museum in book form, Botanicum features more than 160 captivating exhibits. This book is 112 pages of botanical knowledge brought to life in a virtual museum, complete with cross-sections, and it's called Botanicum. You can get a copy of Botanicum by Kathy Willis and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $21. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. We're in the grips of winter now, and the trees dominate the landscape. And I thought I'd close today's show with a little poem about trees that I stumbled on doing some tree research in January. We're learning more and more about trees thanks to folks like the great German forester and author Peter Wohlenben and his book, The Hidden Life of Trees: What They Feel, How They Communicate, Discoveries from a Secret World. Anyway, this obscure little poem is from the Scottish poet Charles Mackay, and it seemed like an excellent way to end the show for this first day of February. Here's The Language of the Trees by Charles Mackay. I heard the language of the trees in the noons of the early summer, as the leaves were moved like rippling seas by the wind, a constant comer. It came and it went, as its wanton will, and evermore loved to dally with branch and flower from the cope of the hill to the warm depths of the valley. The sunlight glowed, the waters flowed, the birds their music chanted, and the words of the trees on my senses fell, by a spirit of beauty haunted. Said each to each in mystic speech, the skies our branches nourish. The world is good, the world is fair. Let us enjoy and flourish. Again I heard the steadfast trees, the wintry winds were blowing. There seemed a roar as of stormy seas and of ships to the depths down going. And ever a moan through the winds was blown as the branches snapped asunder, and the long boughs swung like the frantic arms of a crowd in affright and wonder. Heavily rattled the driving hail, and storm and flood combining laid bare the roots of mighty oaks under the shingle twining. Said tree to tree, these tempests free our sap and strength shall nourish. Though the world be hard, though the world be cold, we can endure and flourish. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.